Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are following a scent trail that, well, it's really shaped global trade, symbolized divinity, and even fueled colonial ambition for like 3 millennia. We're embarking on a mission really to understand cinnamon, this spice that somehow both the cozy, familiar heart of, Christmas time, and also the seductive, fiery secret weapon you find in high perfumery.
It's an absolutely extraordinary journey, and our source material today really confirms that cinnamon is far more than just a flavor you sprinkle on things. We've got historical texts detailing its, almost unparalleled ancient value, rigorous botanical analyses distinguishing the different varieties, notes on the, frankly, treacherous economics of its global trade, and most importantly for our deep dive today, a detailed look at its critical role in crafting some of the most enduring, sophisticated fragrances in history.
Yeah, so our goal for you today is really to unpack this incredible duality. How does this single aromatic bark manage to bridge that gap between, say, ancient Egyptian rituals and modern luxury brands? It's a fascinating paradox, right? It really speaks volumes about the spice's inherent power.
Absolutely. And the initial insight the sources offer is that cinnamon's power in perfumery doesn't necessarily come from sheer volume. It's not always the star. It's more like an expert supporting character. It serves as both a cornerstone and a catalyst that adds indispensable depth, warmth, color, and complexity to blends. It's like this foundational heat that lifts and amplifies the entire composition. #TechWhile the ancient history and unparalleled value of cinnamon.
Okay, so when we talk about spices having a long history, often we mean maybe a few centuries, but with cinnamon, wow, you're stepping way back into deep antiquity. Let's unpack this history of 3 millennia. It's quite something.
It really is. The research clearly establishes that true cinnamon, Cinnamon verum, specifically the Ceylon variety from modern-day Sri Lanka, has been prized for over 3,000 years. And its use back then spanned far beyond the kitchen. It was central to medicinal practices, it featured in magic rituals, and served as a key component in the earliest known complex perfumes.
To really grasp its significance, we have to look at that ritual use, don't we? It wasn't just a pleasant smell, it was actually associated with the divine, with the sacred.
Exactly. Take Kaifai, for instance. This, arguably the oldest surviving perfume formula we know of from ancient Egypt around 2000 BC. And Kaifai wasn't just for smelling nice. It was this complex incense burned to appease the gods, usually at sunset. It had dozens of ingredients: honey, wine, myrrhs, and crucially cinnamon. Its presence there really elevated the ritual, signifying wealth and purity. And you find further proof of its status in the holy anointing oil described in the Old Testament, in Exodus, where cinnamon is listed as one of the ingredients reserved strictly for sacred use.
Wow. So that ancient use really set the stage for it becoming one of the most coveted prizes along the spice routes. It wasn't just another commodity, it became a symbol of status, of immense wealth, especially as it traveled west towards the Roman Empire.
Oh, the economics are just staggering. By the time you get to the Roman Empire, spices were prohibitively costly. Think about the incredible distance they had to travel, the number of hands they passed through, and cinnamon. It commanded the ultimate price tag. Our sources detail that in the 1st century BC, a single pound of cinnamon cost 1,500 denarii.
I still struggle to contextualize that number. What did 1,500 denarii actually mean to an average person back then?
Okay, yeah, it helps to put it into labor terms. That single pound of bark was equivalent to 50 months of a soldier's salary.
50 months.
50 months. That's over 4 years of pay. Just think about that trade-off. You could buy a small plot of land, maybe, or you could buy 1 pound of this spice. This price pretty much ensured that cinnamon was reserved almost exclusively for the absolute elite, used only for the most opulent occasions like extravagant funerals or massive feasts. It was less a spice, really, and more like a liquid asset, a form of currency.
And as the price soared, the people selling it actively worked to protect that scarcity, right? I heard they created these, pretty outrageous myths about where it came from.
They did. And it's one of the most brilliant examples of early marketing psychology, honestly. Pliny the Elder wrote about how Arab and Eastern merchants, who totally controlled the supply chains, perpetuated these wild, fantastical legends, all to justify the astronomical price and, deter any potential competitors.
Okay, give us the best one. What's the most outlandish story?
Well, the one that really stands out is the myth that the bark didn't grow on trees at all. Instead, it came from the nests of a mythical bird, maybe the phoenix, perched precariously on these sheer, inaccessible cliffs. And the only way to get it was through dangerous, clever means, like tempting the birds down with huge oxen carcasses, making the whole process sound miraculous and deadly. These tales weren't just folklore. They were a very deliberate economic strategy, manipulating perceived risk to maintain their monopoly.
That scarcity and that incredible value meant that controlling the source became a matter of global geopolitical power. It drove massive colonial ambition for centuries.
Absolutely. The control shifted dramatically over time. Venice, with its strategic position, held a near-total monopoly on spices entering Europe back in the 13th century. But then, once maritime exploration advanced, the Portuguese seized control of the trade routes and the sources in the Indian Ocean. They were subsequently pushed out by the, more aggressive Dutch East India Company. It actually wasn't until the 18th century that the British finally took definitive control in Sri Lanka. It's really remarkable how this one fragrant bark became this engine driving global exploration, naval power, and colonial conflict for something like 500 years.
Wow. It's a history just soaked in blood and ambition, isn't it? But moving past the high politics for a moment, the cultural value of cinnamon is just as deep. Our sources mention its use in Eastern medicines.
Yes, that's right. In traditional Ayurvedic medicine, cinnamon is a widely respected therapeutic agent. It's used specifically as a digestive aid to alleviate abdominal pain and generally just to boost vitality and warmth in the body. It was seen as healing you from the inside out, essentially.
And the philosophical dimension in China sounds even grander.
The Taoists, particularly, held it in incredibly high regard. They referred to it as the habitual food of the immortals. They associated cinnamon strongly with the yang, the life principle, warmth, vitality. It was seen as potent, essential, and fundamentally life-affirming.
And before its modern use in concentrated essential oils, the sources remind us it was also integrated into daily life across Europe, which leads right into its role in modern fragrance.
That's exactly right. During the Renaissance, it was commonly used in what they called spicy waters. These were mixtures used for cleaning and freshening clothes and linens, sort of a pre-industrial Febreze, if you will. This practice, using its vibrant warmth as a refreshing and cleansing agent, led directly to the 18th century. When the original formula for eau de cologne was created, mixing notes like lemon, orange, sweet rush cinnamon was actually an integral component. It provided depth and longevity to that fresh citrus blend. It's been integral to the very architecture of fragrance for centuries.
Okay, so if we're discussing the use of cinnamon in sophisticated perfumery, we absolutely have to talk about the botanical reality. Cinnamon isn't just one thing. There are two main varieties, and the distinction between them is crucial, both for the scent profile and, frankly, for public health.
Yes, this is the essential technical pivot we need to make. We have to distinguish between the mild, sweet beauty of true cinnamon and its more potent, often problematic, rival. True cinnamon is Cinnamomum verum, or Zeylanicum. That's Ceylon cinnamon. It's predominantly from Sri Lanka, which accounts for like 90% of the world's supply, though you do find smaller, high-quality yields in Madagascar and the Seychelles, too. It has this delicate, subtle sweetness and a fine, almost floral quality to it, so much more refined.
And then there's the one most of us probably have in our spice rack, cassia.
Right, cassia. Cinnamomum cassia. This comes mainly from China, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Cassia is generally the bark most of us encounter daily on the grocery store shelf, especially in powdered form. It is generally thicker, much stronger, more peppery, and often described as having a raspier or harsher flavor profile compared to Ceylon. It lacks that complex sweetness.
The functional difference in scent and taste is significant, but the sources really underscore a major public health concern here, the coumarin problem. Why is cassia, despite being cheaper, potentially hazardous if you consume it regularly?
This is where, botanical taxonomy crosses directly into consumer safety. While Ceylon cinnamon is associated with genuine health benefits, it's known as an immune booster, can help lower blood pressure. Cassia contains significantly high levels of a compound called coumarin. Coumarin is a naturally occurring compound that, while probably fine in very small doses, can be hepatotoxic, which means basically it can cause liver damage if consumed regularly and in high concentrations.
And the difference in concentration levels is just astonishing, isn't it?
It really is. Cassia can contain up to 250 times more coumarin than true Ceylon cinnamon.
Wow.
So if you're a home baker who uses a large amount of cheap powdered cassia, say a teaspoon a day for a few weeks, you could easily be reaching potentially harmful consumption levels without even realizing it.
And the sources raise a pretty serious concern about what they call regulatory silence surrounding this. How is this widespread adulteration and lack of clear labeling actually impacting consumers?
Well, it represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure, frankly. Because cassia is so much cheaper to produce, loose labeling laws make it incredibly easy for it to be mixed into or sometimes entirely replace expensive Ceylon cinnamon. especially in bulk or pre-ground spice blends. The lack of stringent enforcement means consumers are often buying a potentially harmful product, thinking it's the beneficial true cinnamon. In the U.S., for example, the FDA inspects only a tiny fraction, maybe 1 to 2% of imported food items like spices. So adulteration, mislabeling, and that health risk of high cumin exposure, they frequently go completely unchecked.
So if a consumer wants to be sure they're getting the high-value, safe Ceylon cinnamon, they really have to rely heavily on origin and labeling transparency. There's not much else.
Precisely. That's why the 2022 decision by the EU was actually quite significant. They granted a geographical indication tag, a GI tag to Ceylon cinnamon. This is a mechanism that dictates only spice grown and processed in Sri Lanka can use that specific label within the EU. It's much like the protected status for things like champagne or Parma ham. Now, while this is a huge win for quality control and protecting the value of true Ceylon, our sources do point out a gap. Brands aren't legally mandated to use that tag, meaning the cheaper, less transparent options still flood the market. It helps, but it's not a complete solution.
Okay, let's shift gears to the physical process. Transforming this delicate bark into the essential oil that perfumers covet sounds incredibly laborious, especially judging by that huge price jump you mentioned earlier. How do they actually perform this extraction?
The harvesting of Ceylon cinnamon is truly an art form. It requires specialized skill that's often passed down through generations. The tree isn't cut down, it's actually pruned, with branches cut at a specific inward angle. This allows the tree to regenerate so it can be harvested repeatedly for up to half a century, believe it or not. Once the branches are cut, skilled peelers scrape away the rough outer bark to reveal the softer inner bark. That's the prized cinnamon layer. They use special brass rods to meticulously smooth the surface and loosen it before carving it into those famous thin strips or quills.
Wow, that sounds intensely manual, and I understand the quality grading is incredibly strict, too.
Oh, intensely manual, absolutely. Demands incredible precision. The highest quality, known as alba grade, is incredibly prized because the strips are as thin as a pencil. A peeler is considered lucky if only one in maybe 25 quills achieves that top alba status. The strips are so thin and delicate that they curl immediately upon drying in the sun for about 48 hours, forming those neat rolls or quills we recognize.
And that intense labor, coupled with the really low yield you get from the distillation process, that's what justifies the exponential leap in price, from the raw bark to the final essential oil.
The economics of transformation are just undeniable. 1 ton, that's 1,000 kilograms of raw bark, after all that painstaking labor, yields only about 5 kilograms of essential oil. 5. So while 1 kilogram of the raw bark might cost, say, $2 to $3, 1 kilogram of the finished essential oil jumps dramatically to between $350 and $450. That immense added value is due not only to the scarcity of the high-grade bark, but also the cost of the process itself. The steam distillation often takes 3.5 hours, requiring significant energy and meticulous handling to properly extract those fragrant volatile compounds.
And that resulting essential oil, it has a kind of contrasting scent profile, right? It's not just one singular sweet note.
Exactly. It's a fascinating study in chemical contrast. The instantly recognizable sweet and spicy heat of cinnamon is primarily due to a compound called cinnamic aldehyde that gives it that warm, almost hot sensation on the nose. However, it also contains a significant, though lesser amount of eugenol, which is the very same compound that gives clove its characteristic sharp, spicy scent. So you have this dual nature-sweet heat and woody clove, which is what makes it so versatile for perfumers. Plus, when the bark oil is produced via steam distillation specifically, it brings along with it these dry, almost woody facets, providing a complex backbone that perfumers can really build upon.
Okay, so we understand the complex history, the different types, and the valuable, hard-won nature of the essential oil itself. Now we move into the lab, so to speak. How do perfumers actually wield this powerful spice? Why is cinnamon considered such a vital ally in blending complex fragrances?
Well, you could almost call it the ultimate bridge note in perfumery. Cinnamon adds instant warmth, richness, and an undeniable touch of sophistication. And because its scent profile is so broad, sweet yet spicy, woody, and warm, it can be perceived quite subjectively. Some might find it powdery, others suave, maybe intensely hot, slightly bitter, or even astringent. That wide emotional range it covers allows it to connect really diverse ingredients within a formula. It can seamlessly conjure the domestic comfort of, say, a spiced cider one moment, and then in the next, evoke the intense heat of an exotic, faraway landscape. It's incredibly versatile in that way.
So when a perfumer is trying to build a complex composition, what are cinnamon's ideal dance partners? What does it blend best with?
Oh, cinnamon is incredibly harmonious. Its perfect match list is pretty long, actually. It instantly pairs beautifully with creamy sweetness, most notably vanilla, which really softens its fiery edge and creates that classic gourmand feel. It injects a marvelous warmth into floral compositions, particularly working well with rose and geranium. If you want sharpness or brightness, it works wonderfully with bright citrus notes like mandarin orange. And for those deep, long-lasting oriental or amber accords, it is magnificent, alongside notes like cardamom, sandalwood, clove, and black pepper. It really sings with other spices and woods.
It sounds like it can almost do everything, but the sources also mention a critical constraint. Why is cinnamon seldom the main star, the dominant note in a high-end fragrance?
Yeah, this really speaks to the tightrope walk that is high perfumery.
Hmm.
The issue is if a perfumer uses cinnamon too heavily, the fragrance risks tipping over the line and becoming, well, too foody.
Right, like a bakery smell.
Exactly. Instead of smelling like a sophisticated, abstractly spiced composition, it starts smelling too much like a literal cinnamon bun or a pumpkin spice latte. So the craft lies in using it skillfully to add warmth and complexity under the main thematic notes, making sure it enhances the scent's overall narrative without dominating the conversation. If that makes sense.
And this brings us back to the chemistry and regulation side of things. Because cinnamol, or cinnamic aldehyde, is a known potential allergen, its concentration is heavily restricted by regulatory bodies, like IFRA. So if perfumers can't use a high percentage of the natural oil, how do they still create that characteristic cinnamon accord? Are they essentially selling us an illusion?
That's a great question, and it really illustrates the genius, or maybe the necessity, of modern fragrance chemistry. It's not necessarily an illusion, but more like an engineered interpretation, a clever workaround. Perfumers often create the effect of cinnamon synthetically by relying on a combination of complementary materials. They might start with robust, warm, woody materials, things like cedarwood or cashmeran, to provide that dry, woody background that steam-distilled bark oil naturally possesses.
Okay, so they build the woody base first. Then how do they introduce the spice and heat back into that framework without using too much cinnamol?
Well, they carefully layer in other notes known for their warmth and projection. Eugenol, which we mentioned is also present in clove, provides that sharp, heady spice quality. They often use pink pepper, which gives a kind of dry, effervescent heat that mimics the bite of cinnamon without carrying the same regulatory risk as high cinnamic aldehyde levels. By combining these elements, the woody base, the eugenol, the pink pepper, maybe other trace notes, they can synthetically achieve the characteristic warmth, projection, and depth associated with cinnamon, all while adhering to safety limits. It's about creating the emotional register of the spice using a palette of different, safer notes. Hashtag #TagGame5. Iconic cinnamon scents and noteworthy fragrances.
Right, now we get to see the theory put into practice across, well, the last century or so of fragrance history. Cinnamon has clearly been a bedrock ingredient, infusing compositions across almost every major fragrance family.
The lineage is truly remarkable. We can trace cinnamon's influence way back through some real trailblazers. One of the first iconic post-war scents to really feature it prominently was Femme by Roches, created back in 1944. Now, this scent was fundamentally a classic fruity sea spray, so you have that foundation of oak moss, wood, and amber. But the perfumer added cinnamon and cumin to inject this surprising spicy heat. It sort of softened the structure and gave it this plush, almost velvet-like texture. Really innovative for its time.
And then just a few years later, in 1953, the great American icon arrived. Youth Dew by Estee Lauder. This wasn't just a perfume, it was a cultural phenomenon, wasn't it? And a huge marketing risk at the time.
Oh, Youth Dew was an immediate, massive blockbuster, primarily because of its incredibly innovative marketing. It was initially sold as a luxurious bath oil that, oh, by the way, could also be worn as a fragrance. This encouraged women to use it daily, shifting scent from being this special occasion luxury to an everyday indulgence. Smart, scent-wise. Cinnamon and clove are absolutely the stars here. They create this powerful, pervasive warmth that really sets the spicy floral heart, often a heady carnation note ablaze. It's a heavy, almost Baroque composition wrapped in dense patchouli and amber. It really set the standard for that big, bold, unapologetic style of American perfumery for decades.
Looking at the overall genealogy of scent families, cinnamon seems to be consistently used to anchor certain types of fragrances.
Yeah, that structural presence is very clear. In the woody family, you see it lending its warm complexity to early greats like Chanel's Bois d'Huile from way back in 1926. But it is perhaps most essential, most fundamental in the amber family, or what used to be called Oriental. Think of classics like Old Spice from 1938. It relies heavily on cinnamon's warmth for its signature masculine profile. Then came the opulent, room-filling bombs of the late 70s and 80s. Opium by YSL in 77, Obsession by Calvin Klein in 85. In those, cinnamon provides immense heat and depth. It acts almost like the accelerant for those rich, dense, resinous amber compositions.
The sources also highlight the key role in the spicy resinous floral category, giving examples like those Dior powerhouses from the era.
Precisely. Dior Essence from 1979 and the famously dramatic, almost notorious Poison from 1985 both use cinnamon quite heavily. In these sense, cinnamon isn't just about cozy warmth. It contributes significantly to that sophisticated dramatic projection and opulence that really defined the perfumery of that era. It helps build a complex, powerful bouquet that absolutely announces itself when you walk into a room.
Moving into the 1990s, the style started to evolve, didn't it? It seemed to move away from that very overt, opulent spice towards something maybe more nuanced, a kind of woody elegance.
That's a great way to put it. Egoist by Chanel in 1990 is a perfect masterclass in this evolution. It sort of took the dry, woody structure of Bois d'Ile and sharpened it, made it more modern. Here, cinnamon is layered beautifully with rosewood and sandalwood, creating this spicy, incredibly suave effect. It almost smells boozy, like a fine liqueur or spiced wood. It's sophisticated, warm, and distinctly masculine, but without being overpowering in the way the 80s scents were.
And of course, we have to talk about the pivotal scent that many say truly redefines cinnamon's modern use, Femme du Bois by Serge Lutens in 1992. This one feels really important.
Oh, historically, it's hugely significant. Femme du Bois basically moves cinnamon out of the strict oriental or heavy spice category. It was originally built as a tribute to Atlas cedarwood, which is traditionally seen as a sharp, dry, quite masculine base note. But then the perfumers layered it with these gorgeous notes of candied peach, plum, and a generous sprinkling of cinnamon and vanilla. The cinnamon here acts almost like the binding agent. It softens the austerity of the cedarwood and connects those wet, juicy fruit notes to the dry wood structure below. It created this completely new olfactory profile, warm, woody, spicy, and yet somehow delicate and feminine. It earned instant cult status and influenced countless fragrances that came after it. Really groundbreaking.
And then for contrast, we also have the pure, unadulterated exuberance of something like Kenzo Jungle from 1996, which seems to throw subtlety completely out the window and just embraces the full spice cabinet.
Kenzo Jungle is just a joyous explosion of spices. It heavily features clove, cardamom, and cinnamon, all set against this rich, grounding base of vanilla and patchouli. It fully embraces the extravagance and the sheer heat that cinnamon can provide. It's a hallmark of that bold, unapologetic, maybe slightly over-the-top style of perfumery from the mid-90s. Loads of fun.
Okay, shifting to more contemporary luxury, we need to analyze the modern use of cinnamon in a specific fragrance that our sources highlighted. The IRF Saffron Leather Eau de Parfum. How is cinnamon used uniquely here? How is it distinct from, say, those big booming ambers of the past?
Right, the IRFE Saffron Leather is a great example because it showcases a much more refined, modern application of cinnamon. Here, it's not really used to make this scent smell cozy or obviously spicy in that foodie way. Its role feels more architectural. The core profile is built around two quite dense, rich materials. Ambery saffron, which is complex, a bit leathery, a bit metallic itself, and warm leather. Both of those notes can be quite heavy, potentially a little bit dusty or flat on their own.
Okay, so what does the cinnamon do in that specific environment? How does it help?
Well, the cinnamon provides this crucial internal heat and a subtle lift. It seems to seamlessly merge the saffron, with all its complexity, with the rich, almost velvety texture of the leather accord. By lending its characteristic warmth and a subtle dryness, the cinnamon prevents the leather and saffron from becoming too monolithic or suffocating. It elevates the whole composition, making it feel enveloping and luxurious, but also sophisticated and not overwhelming. Then you have subtle notes of sandalwood and vanilla, adding further complexity, ensuring it maintains this air of luxury. It's positioned perfectly for transitioning from, say, a day of professional sophistication into an elegant evening event.
It seems like the IRFE collection itself, which apparently ranges from something called Smoldering Pepper's Fiery Dance to Marshmallow Musk's Gentle Whisper, might use cinnamon deliberately to demonstrate its incredible capacity for versatility, that ability to operate at pretty much any volume from a shout to a whisper.
That's actually a perfect distillation of its modern potential. Cinnamon isn't just one fixed note anymore. It's really a spectrum of warmth, whether it's being used to crank up the heat dramatically in a composition like Smoldering Pepper, or providing just the delicate, subtle background warmth needed to ground the airy sweetness of something like Marshmallow Musk. It adapts flawlessly. It conforms to the emotional register the perfumer wants to achieve. That's its real strength today.
All right, now that we understand cinnamon's potent chemistry, its deep history, and its artistic applications, let's discuss practical application. How can you, our listener, wear a fragrance that features this intense, warm spice elegantly? How do you ensure it complements your presence rather than, overpowering the room?
That's a key question, because cinnamon fragrances are almost universally warm, rich, and naturally quite potent. They really must be treated with a bit of respect when you apply them. The primary rule really is to master the art of intensity adjustment. You absolutely must start simple. Just one careful spritz on a pulse point. Think wrists, behind the ears, maybe the nape of the neck. The natural heat of your skin is what activates the scent molecules and gradually diffuses the fragrance over the hours. This ensures the aroma remains intriguing, a discovery, rather than this overwhelming cloud following you around. Less is definitely more to start.
I found the tip about longevity and applying to clothing particularly useful, especially if you want subtlety.
Yes, it's an excellent trick. Skin chemistry often causes scents, especially volatile top notes, to fade faster. But fabric acts like a scent reservoir. So if you desire a gentle, long-lasting trail that projects very subtly, try spraying a scarf, maybe the lining of a jacket, or even the hem of a dress. This allows the scent to stay with you for much longer, but it only projects gently when you move. It creates a much softer, more intimate impression compared to spraying directly onto warm skin.
Beyond just simple application, the sources also encourage a bit of experimentation through layering, creating what they call a unique scent mosaic.
Yeah, layering allows you to truly become the alchemist of your own personal aroma. It's fun. For instance, if you find a particular cinnamon scent maybe a bit too aggressive or sharp for your taste, try layering it with a simple pure vanilla fragrance. That will immediately soften the spice and introduce this lovely creamy sweetness. Conversely, if you want to enhance the complexity and make it feel perhaps more exotic or deeper, you could try combining it with complementary notes like a dried rose absolute or a touch of earthy patchouli oil. Even simple experimentation, like adding a touch of another single spice essence you might have, like cardamom or black pepper essential oil, allows you to modulate the intensity and really personalize the overall narrative of the perfume you're wearing.
And finally, we need to think about matching the scent to the moment, to the context. A really heavy spice scent might feel a bit jarring at a casual brunch or in a crowded office.
Precisely. Context is everything with potent scents. Spicy, powerful cinnamon notes are almost universally perfect for evening events. They convey mystery, allure, intense sophistication. They feel magnetic and are perfectly suited for colder months or nighttime gatherings. However, for a daytime scenario, like being in the office or just a casual outing, you'd probably want to opt for those lighter iterations we discussed, where cinnamon is perhaps intertwined with powdery notes, bright citruses, or gentle florals. The goal really is always for the aroma to complement the environment and the people around you, ensuring it's a pleasant discovery, not a dominant invasive force. But the great thing about cinnamon, as we've seen, is that because its warmth is so universally appealing, it really does work beautifully across all genders and personal styles when applied thoughtfully.
Okay, our deep dive today feels pretty complete. We've traced this beautiful, fragrant bark all the way from being a 3 millennia-old commodity that literally fueled the spice roots to understanding the critical chemical nuances of its distillation, the vital difference between high-value Ceylon, potentially risky high coumarin cassia, and finally seeing its masterful, nuanced placement in iconic perfumery, from the radical statement of youth dew to the revolutionary elegance of Féminité du Bois. It's been quite a journey.
Absolutely. And I think the ultimate takeaway here is that the enduring value of cinnamon really transcends the mere smell itself. Its power lies in its incredible ability to evoke visceral memories and immediate emotions in us. Whether that sensation is the deep, sophisticated warmth of a high-fashion, ambery scent used to convey confidence and elegance, or maybe the pure, nostalgic comfort of a cherished family recipe baking in the oven. Cinnamon consistently adds strength, power, warmth, color, and an undeniable sensuality to pretty much anything it touches. It's got this incredible emotional range.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. We learned that centuries of global trade, brutal colonial conflict, and frankly astronomical prices were all driven by this single aromatic bark. The earliest perfumes known to man, dating back maybe 4,000 years, relied on cinnamon to signify divinity and untouchable status. So next time you catch that warm, spicy trail on your skin, or maybe just floating in the air, consider how that sweet heat is connecting you directly to the trade wars of the 17th century, to the sacred rituals of ancient Egypt. Ask yourself, What story, stretching back across millennia, is your signature scent actually telling?